You don't admire someone who won't take responsibility for themselves. In fact, you have a sense of contempt for that. And if you happen to be that person, then you'll wake up in the middle of the night and berate yourself with what's left of your conscience for failing to undertake your moral duty, your intrinsic moral duty. And you can't escape that. And that's so interesting, that you can't escape that. If you were the creature who could invent your own values, as Nietzsche suggested, as an antidote to the death of God, then you just forgive your transgressions and you wouldn't suffer the bitter pangs of conscience, but you do. And the reason you do is because you're doing things that are wrong and you should stop, and you know it, and maybe you can't. And then, well, let's say then the opposite is that you admire someone who can take responsibility for himself or herself. That's a start. And then maybe you admire someone even more if they've forged their character sufficiently to move past cynicism so that not only they take responsibility for themselves, but they can take responsibility for their family. And they're there for the people who love them when it's necessary. And if you do that, then you have something, I wouldn't say necessarily to be proud of, but at least you have one less thing to upbraid yourself with. And that's something. And then you can move past that and you can say, well, maybe if you put yourself together enough, carefully enough, spoke the truth enough, were courageous enough, in spite of the reasons you have not to be, that you could also be someone of benefit to yourself and your family and your community, and you partake in structuring things in a harmonious manner by living in that way. It's not an individual focused ethos. It's an ethos of harmony among levels. You should do what's good for you, but it has to be what's good for your family at the same time, and it has to be what's good for you and your family and your community at the same time. And that works musically, it makes all the levels work in harmony. And you can tell when that's happening. And this is another thing that's of great utility to know, is that when you're in that place where you're acting in the proper manner and you're facing things courageously and you're speaking the truth, you're imbued with a sense of fundamental meaning. And that meaning is the antidote to the catastrophe of life. And it's the antidote psychologically, because you have to have that meaning, because otherwise your life is too dark and too dreadful and it will corrupt you. So it's the antidote psychologically, but it's also the antidote practically, because we're not nothing, us human beings. They say that we're made in the image of God, and it's hard to say what that means, but it means, at least in part, to participate in the process of bringing the good into being. And we can all do that, and the opposite. And if we accept our responsibility to ourselves and to other people and to our communities, and we lift that load up, then we live lives that are meaningful, and that stops us from being corrupt. It provides us with a medication against catastrophe, and it also practically improves the world. That's the other thing. It's not just psychological. You can make things worse. Everyone knows that, and no doubt you have in many ways, but you can make things better. And they actually get better. And there's a reason for hope. And there's something to be said to know that you're the sort of creature that can look mortality and catastrophe and malevolence straight in the eye, so to speak, and nonetheless stand up and do what's right. And that all there is in that is good. And that's what I've been telling people. Thank you very much.